Recently, NASA, the U.S. agency that brought us to the moon landing, disclosed that they experienced a data breach at their Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California. In this case, the attacker entered the JPL network on or about April 2018 and remained hidden from network administrators and NASA's existing network security tools for nearly 10 months, until February 2019. While NASA was able to stop this advanced persistent threat, they discovered that the attacker was able to enter the network through a $30 Raspberry Pi mini computer installed in a network research lab and used to run tests. The attacker bypassed NASA's existing security tools. Network administrators couldn't see that the Raspberry Pi had been connected, and the attacker was able to access several classified military documents during their time in the network. A post-breach security audit even revealed several other devices connected to the network and unknown to NASA's network administrators. If you're interested, you can read about the attack in NASA's report discussing the issues surrounding the attack. A link is in the description. Now, we want to make clear that NASA isn't a customer of GREYCORTEX, but there are a lot of similarities between the NASA attack and the visibility issues that customers face on a daily basis. We thought it might be interesting to take a look at a similar series of events, just to see what visualizing this sort of situation might look like and why it's important. Before we get started, let's take a short look at some of the problems identified by NASA's auditors in this case. Today, we're going to focus on the first problem and how solving the issues of visualization and detection can resolve, either completely or partially, most of the rest of the problems. So let's get to it. Here, we're looking at a testing environment, so the data isn't from a customer, but the actions are real. Let's just have a look at what it looks like when there are many devices in the network. Now, let's go back to our example. We can see that there are some devices in the network. Having seen that this is the case, here we can see the activities of the Raspberry Pi in question. As a neat trick, if we click once, we can see that it's a Raspberry Pi by this little Raspberry Pi icon. We didn't gin this up for the video, it just happens that our Mendel network traffic analysis solution shows this, and we happen to be talking about a Raspberry Pi. Now that we know we're looking at the Raspberry Pi, we'll click it and go into more detail. Here we can see what services it's communicating on. As we click, the filter on the left auto-populates with our choices. If we select Services, we can see all of the local and remote, SSH for encrypted communications, DNS, etc. It's all there. If we want, we can go back to Flows and see every communication flow that this Raspberry Pi produced, including who else it communicated with. We'll select an unencrypted one, and we can see the requests and responses that were going back and forth. Now, these are very interesting, especially if we want to do a forensic investigation of this attack. But at the moment, let's summarize where we are. Firstly, we can visualize the network. We can see all the connected devices and see the Raspberry Pi and all of its communications down to the network communication flows. We can see what's connected to the network and what's happening there. Normally, this would involve network audits and log files and a lot of time and personnel that nobody has, including NASA apparently. We're ahead already. Now, let's look at an attack. As we said earlier, we connected this Raspberry Pi to our test environment, then we attacked it. It wasn't the most stealthy of attacks, but it does show strange activity on the network from this device. Here, we're currently looking at the suspicious activities of the device. We're seeing internal scan activity, Trojans. If we want to see only the events detected by behavioral analysis, e.g. anomalous activities, we can turn off the detection of known threats. If we want to see only the known attacks, we can do that too. Let's look at the communications between the attacker and our Raspberry Pi. There's a lot of activity. Now, what if we want to see who our Raspberry Pi has been communicating with internally? In other words, now that it looks infected, is there a chance that it's infected other devices? Let's just filter for our device, and then we can see what it's communicating with. Now, there are several other actions we could take at this point if we were faced with this situation. We could block the device at the firewall. We could also set up an export to SIAM, a configuration that NASA was using, if we wanted. If this was a traditional device, like a laptop for example, and the user was signed into an Active Directory domain, we could call up the user and yell at them for violating policies on unauthorized devices. So where are we now? We can see the devices in the network, what they're communicating with, and now we can see that this visibility leads to better detection outcomes, even for advanced attacks where there are no known signatures. But all of these things are possible only if we can see what's happening inside our network at any given moment. We need to see when devices connect and when they go dark. With that information, we're going to be aware of a rogue Raspberry Pi in the network. we will know what it does, and we would be able to cut its access from the rest of the network so it can't cause any harm. To pick back up with the list of problems identified at NASA, this ability to see the devices connected to the network not only means that rogue Raspberry Pis are visible, but because their activities are visible, it's possible to resolve threats quickly, bringing the time to resolution from 180 days to a matter of minutes. Secondly, visibility brings the added benefit of extending the capabilities of the existing cybersecurity or even network management team. In other words, doing more with the same amount of people because the information, what's hiding in the network, is more quickly and easily identifiable. Visibility is important, no matter if you're NASA or a specialty eShop or government ministry. It shows you what's connected, when, and what it's doing, and helps fill the gaps left by traditional security tools. Can you identify all the devices in your network right now? Contact GREYCORTEX or your preferred network service provider to find out more.